guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we will be doing the most exciting video of the whole year. And that is going to be my favorite books, or my top favorite books of 2024 video. I'm wearing my crown like I've worn the past 2 or 3 years. I don't remember, maybe 2, I'm not sure. Because these are the royalty books. These are the royal books of the previous year. That's my logic. I just like it, okay? I did not choose a particular amount of books to be my favorite. Like, I didn't choose a top 10. I honestly don't even know how many books are here. We just go by vibe. You know, we just go by vibe. I have a few honorable mentions. I just wanted to briefly mention the titles of. I probably won't talk about too much, just because I feel like they should be mentioned. I feel like they need to be mentioned, but they're not, for some reason or other, they don't feel like favorite book vibe. You know what I'm saying? They don't hit that favorite book vibe. You feel. So let's look. I do log all my books on Goodreads. I did end up reading 102 books in the year of 2024. A lot of those books were audiobooks, because that's something that I could do easily in my day-to-day life, like when I'm driving, at the gym, cleaning the house, what have you. So yeah, these are my top favorites from the 102 that I read. We are just quickly gonna mention the honorable mentions. The first book that I have here as an honorable mention was actually the last book that I finished on the last day of 2024, and that is Blue Nights by Joan Didion, which is a memoir. So nonfiction writing about her life after the death of her daughter, and her grappling with getting older and what that feels like to be in an older body and how people treat you. And she's talking about dying and thinking about dying. This book just really moved me. It really moved me. There was a really powerful section at the end about what it feels like for her to get older and how other people look at her. And yeah, it made me emotional. And that is an honorable mention. Another honorable mention, we have My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Ottessa Moshfegh, which I read very early on this year. I just felt like this was, for me, in my reading of it, it just felt like a really perfect and really beautiful representation of depression and what depression looks like and how that makes you look like, how you can be super selfish, how you can view the world negatively, how you kind of come out of that. This was just such a beautiful depiction of depression and one I super related to. We also have The Guest by Emma Cline, which I checked out of the library. I'm surprised that I like this so much. This was such like a quiet, slow read. Well, not quiet, it was a really slow read about this girl, this young girl, maybe like young 20s, who's living off of other men, essentially. So, and nothing is specified whether or not, like, what her specific job title is. It's very ambiguous, but this book is a lot about autonomy, and what's the word that I'm looking for? Worth and value. I just found it to be a great read. It's something that I think about a lot, actually. So that one was pretty close to reaching my favorite books list, but I did get, I don't know, honorable mention, The Guest. Then we have Bonjour Tristesse as an honorable mention by Françoise Sagan, which is translated from the French. She wrote this when she was 18. Crazy, wrote this when she was 18. This is super short. This is essentially about this young teenage girl who lives with her father. Her mother died when she was young. To me, the reading was she doesn't want to grow up and she likes her lifestyle with her father. And then this other woman comes into her father's life. She's going to be her stepmother. And it's all about her fixation and fascination with this other woman who's coming into her life, and how she both is, you can see that she like is very inspired by her, but she also really loathes her. It comes out in this type of loathing, and she tries to sabotage her. And I think it's supposed to be a metaphor. To me, it felt like a metaphor of like sabotaging your own self, and just this refusal almost to accept growing up and changing and what have you. So I really liked this. Thought that was great. And this one is another honorable mention. This is my last honorable mention for this video. A lot of people's favorite book one of their favorite books of this past year, and that's James by Percival Everett. It just doesn't, I just couldn't put it on my favorites list for whatever reason, but this is such a powerful retelling of Huckleberry Finn from the slave Jim's perspective, whose name is actually James. He claims his name to be James in this book, and it was just such a powerful retelling of that story, and I think it's completely necessary I think it's just completely necessary, I think, to read in tandem with Huckleberry Finn. Like, now going forward, I feel like this should be a part of the canon, and just the discussion of just the discussion that it was having. So, this was great. I'm glad it exists. All right, so those are my honorable mentions. And then for my favorite books of the year, they're absolutely, positively, in no particular order. So let's just jump into what's on the top of the stack in front of me. So another book that I read, I read it right before Blue Night, so right at the end of the year, and that is If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin. And I swear, I don't think this man could write, or any of this man's books could not be favorite books. Like, truly, there is something so magnificently powerful. Makes my eyes water. When I get passionate, my eyes water. Oh my god, it's just the beginning of the video, Mackenzie, get it together. There's just something truly magical about the way this man can write, and the way this man views people and life. I mean, literally, there's nothing wrong with the way that this man crafts stories, essays, books, whatever the heck. I mean, he's just perfect. He's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now, this book is about two young people, Tish and Fawny, and their families. And Fawny is a young black boy, and Tish is a young black girl, and it's about their lives living in America around the time this was written, sometime in the 20th century. And Tish becomes pregnant with Fawny's baby, and he is convicted of a crime and is put in jail. And it is heavily implied that he did not commit this crime in this book. So it's about the injustice of the justice system, or the criminal justice system, how screwed up that is. It's about these families that come together and become this one family, and it is just such a beautiful story about family and about taking care of each other and about what it means to choose your family, whoever you consider your family, what it means to actually decide to show up for them continuously, and like truly what it means to like love and support each other. And also, this was just sad because of like the topic, you know, what the premise of the book is. So good. This was just so good. I just can't even. I just cannot even. I felt like I wanted to say something else, but oh, I remember. This book reminded me a lot of An American Marriage by Tayari Jones, just similar in the plot, like in the fact that they're both about a young couple who the man is wrongfully convicted of a crime and goes to jail. That's the premise of both of them. So I was kind of thinking about that, but they're also like written by completely different people and different. But yeah, maybe if you like this or that premise, check out An American Marriage, or if you liked An American Marriage and you haven't read this yet, definitely read this. So yes. Then we have Playground by Richard Powers, which I did just read in December. A lot of books that I read in December ended up on my favorite books of the year list, or honorable mentions, whatever. I find that funny. Really, at the end of the year, I was like, I don't know. I don't know what it was. I just wanted to read books that I guess were 5-star predictions, and look at me go. They were. Playground. I just talked about this in my last book haul that I posted, and I've never read Richard Powers before. I want to read all of his books now. I own the Overstory, excited about that. This is such a necessary read for our modern times. I can't even. I mean, like, This is about creation and art and sustainability, and specifically the ocean and conservation and AI and advancement and progress and what all those things mean. And again, the implications of all of it and the inevitability of all of it, and the inevitability of progress, whatever the heck that means. And I was so in love with this book. The first chapter started kind of odd because you kind of have this like folklore-y chapter in the beginning, all about this island called Makatia, which I learned about, I guess was a real island. You know, I didn't know about that. And now I know about that. We follow a few different characters. We follow a few different characters. One is a woman who's like from Makatia. I believe she was from Makatia, like originally she was born there or something, some island like that. I forget, I apologize. And we follow two young boys who grow up, and we follow their whole lives. One of them is fantastically brilliant with poetry and writing and language and feelings, and the other one is fantastically brilliant at computer programming, and he develops all these websites, and we learn about websites and how companies collect data and how that was formed. And how companies started to be able to make money and profit off of internet data. And now he's creating all these AI things, and AI comes to this beautiful remote island of 80 people called Makatia, and how that island, like in the corner of the world, is so greatly affected by so many different things. And we follow this woman who I love, who's a diver, and she works in ocean conservation. And I love her chapters because she narrates like what it's like to be underwater, and she's so in awe of all these fish and the underwater world, and it was just so beautiful. Like, it was so beautiful. So please, I think this is a necessary read for our modern times. Absolutely. I do not say that lightly at all. Next, we have a very different book, but we have Funny Story by Emily Henry. I love Emily Henry. This was a fun read for me. I know I did hear recently a couple people mention that they didn't particularly love this book, but that's okay. I'm happy for you. I loved it. It was just such a cozy read for me, and I think at the time that I picked this up, it was one of the first books that I had read in a while, again, at the time that I read it, where I didn't want to do anything else but read. And I read it so quickly. I read it in like a day or a day and a half. I just loved it. I was so excited to be there and be with these characters. And I loved the cute, cozy, small town atmosphere. I loved that our main character was a children's librarian and she loved her job. I loved the couple. And I love Emily Henry's ability to craft like the bonds that she's able to craft between her main characters. And I've said this in the vlog where I read this, but I've said this before. I don't think she's particularly great at creating like steamy romance or anything like that. It's not that. I don't think that's her skill. Her skill really is in building up these like true bonds and these like true friendships. And it almost feels like these characters just inevitably belong together. And I really love that about her books. I really love that about Funny Story in particular. And both of our characters we follow, each of them one of our main female character was about to get married to this man who has a best friend named Petra. And they grew up together, and the whole time our main female character, I forget her name, was like, I never remember names, was like, well, I remembered Petra. It's like, it's giving me, Jane the Virgin, you know. Daphne is our main female character. Daphne was engaged to Peter. Yeah, Peter's BFF's Petra. The whole time Daphne and Peter are together, he's like, you're being ridiculous. We're just friends. There's never been anything romantic. Well, 1 week before their wedding, he goes, I'm leaving you for Petra. I'm in love with her. And that's what happens. And she's screwed because she lives in his home, like under his name, and he has the money, and she doesn't necessarily have a lot of money. Anyway, she moves out and moves in with Petra's now ex-boyfriend. And that's Miles, and Daphne and Miles' grow this friendship and grow this bond, and they are the main love interest of this book. And I just really loved it. I really loved it. I thought it was great. And I loved Miles. I loved Miles's character. I really did, because he was someone who always felt put down by Petra's family, who was more of like a privileged, wealthy family, had certain type of expectations. And he just wanted to do his own things. He had his own passions and his own life. And he always felt put down by them. And I loved that storyline. And I loved Miles so much for who he was. And that was a discussion, because that's something that I feel in my real life sometimes, I suppose. Maybe it's self-imposed. I'm not sure. But yeah, he like worked at a winery. It was just cute. It was just cute. And we see Daphne like making friends. Yeah, big fan of Emily Henry. Can't wait for her new book coming out this spring 2025. Next, we have another book that I finished in December, but Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I do really like Sally Rooney. I do really like her. I haven't loved all of her books, but I've really liked pretty much most of them. Love Normal People. This is definitely her best book, in my opinion. It's really giving future classic, modern classic vibes. And it is about two brothers who are grieving after the death of their father. They're pretty far apart in age. They're about 12 or 14 years apart. And each of them are dealing with their own romantic foibles, problems, relationships. And the younger brother is a chess prodigy, or he was really good at chess, the older brother. And the younger brother's dating this much older woman. She's actually just around his brother's age. And they have a really cool relationship. I really like it. I really liked it. The older brother's perspectives were really interesting because I found them to be written in such an artistic way. And I mentioned in my wrap-up where I talked about this book recently, it reminded me a lot of Emer McBride, who's a modern Irish female author who's also coming out with a new book in the next couple of months. Maybe we'll see that on the Woman's Prize. Who knows? Maybe we'll see this on the Woman's Prize. Who knows? But yeah, he was very depressed, and you could really see that in the stylistic choices of the way Sally Rooney chose to write his character and portray his thought processes. He's dealing with relationships with two women. I just felt like this had so many interesting discussions in it. I love the philosophies being discussed, and she's really good. Like, she's solid, you know what I mean? She's just a solid writer, and she certainly has a style, and it really works for her. She nails it. So that's Intermezzo. Then we have the first book that I read in 2024, and that's Kurt Vonnegut's Galapagos. I didn't talk about this, I think, at all when I read it, but I just love Kurt Vonnegut. Like, and that's really why this is on here. And I've thought about this a few times throughout the year as well. It like crosses my mind. This book is about a group of people essentially that end up on the Galapagos Islands and cut off completely from the rest of the world. Something happens where the rest of the world completely wiped out, dead, you know, no more. And this group of like four people, four people have to, without knowing what's going on, they have to repopulate the earth. And they're on the Galapagos Islands, so it's like all about natural selection and what's it called? There's such a word when you're like evolution. It's about evolution. I just love Kurt Vonnegut, and that's really the long and short of it. I just love Kurt Vonnegut. I love everything that he does. So that's Galapagos. I just think he's so clever. He's so clever and funny. He's so funny. I love him. We have another James Baldwin, and that is The Fire Next Time, which is a collection of a long essay and a pretty short letter where James Baldwin is talking about race in America in around the 50s, the 1950s, 60s, in the 20th century. And yeah, 1963. Again, I just don't think there's anything this man could write, or there's nothing that exists that this man has written that wouldn't be 5 stars or amazing or a favorite or necessary. Like, I just think that there's something in the way James Baldwin writes that's so insane. Like, he's just so good, and I love the way this selection of writings captured me and fired me up, captured me, made me think, made me feel, made me empathize, made me feel seen in a way. And I love how this book it taught me a lot about James Baldwin and his life as well. I didn't realize he was a preacher. I love the discussions of religion in this book as well as politics, but specifically religion I found to be super fascinating. If you haven't read The Fire Next Time, you really have to read The Fire Next Time. Like, this is necessary reading, okay? This is necessary reading. It's so well done. And that's something that I feel like I'll always want to go back to. Yes. After that, on my list, we have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. Wow, I read this early on last year. I finally got to it. This is my second book that I've read by Kazuo Ishiguro. The first book that I read by him was Clara and the Sun, and I really hated it. Really didn't like it. It didn't do anything for me. And I was like, well, if that's Kazuo Ishiguro, I'm not gonna read any of his other books because that didn't do anything for me. I really didn't like it. And everyone was kind of comparing Clara and the Sun to Never Let Me Go, and I'm like, well, steer clear of that. But also, Never Let Me Go is one of like top best books of the new century. It was on the New York Times top best books of the century, and I'd read this before that though, and I just see it on so many best book lists. So many people love it, consider it a modern classic, and I totally see why now. The way this book made me sob my eyes out, the way this book made me cry was something. It was something. It was something. We're basically following these three characters. Our main character, the like protagonist, our narrator, that's the word, is, I think her name's Kathy. And they're growing up at this boarding school somewhere in England, and it's about these kids' lives in this boarding school, their connections with each other, and where their lives go on from there. And this is such a slow, quiet, creeping book that you don't even know why it's so powerful, but it like slowly creeps like glittering smoke under your skin, and it completely takes over, and the next thing you know, you're crying, and you're like, wow, this really encapsulates life. It really does. So this was great. This was really, really, really great. Next, we have another one that's like on that God tier list. We have Sula by Toni Morrison. This is the only book I've read by Toni Morrison now, but I own 4 of her other books, which I'm excited to get to. Hopefully when I get to them, I don't know. Wow. Again, I can't get over how this human can write. I just can't. I literally cannot get over it. And this is all about loss of innocence. Let me tell you what the premise is first. It's about these 2 girls. One of their names is Sula, but they grow up in this small town called The Bottom, which is ironic because it's actually on the top of a hill. It's about all these people in the town. It's about these 2 girls growing up together, what happens to each of their lives, how they affect each other, how everybody else's lives are affected just being in this town and by being connected to one another. And again, I said it's about loss of innocence. We get references to war. The way this book is written though, let me just read you this without context. I'm just gonna read this. As Reverend Beale moved into his sermon, the hands of the woman unfolded like pairs of ravens' wings and flew high above their hats in the air. They did not hear all of what he said. They heard one word or phrase or inflection that was for them the connection between the event and themselves. For some it was the term sweet Jesus, and they saw the lamb's eye and the truly innocent victim, themselves. They acknowledged the innocent child hiding in the corner of their hearts, holding a sugar and butter sandwich. That one, the one who lodged deep in their fat, thin, old, young skin, and was the one the world had hurt. Or they thought of their son, I love this book, newly killed, and remembered his legs in short pants and wondered where the bullet went in. Or they remembered how dirty the room looked when their father left home and wondered if that is the way the slim young Jew felt, he who for them was both son and lover, and in whose downy face they could see the sugar and butter sandwiches and feel the oldest and most devastating pain there is. Not the pain of childhood, but the remembrance of it. So yeah, that's Sula. Definitely read that. You know, definitely read that. All right, the next two books we have kind of go in tandem with each other because they're part of the same series. And that's Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. And these, again, hit me at the right time this year when I really just needed some cozy comfort. And that is exactly what they are. These are just cozy fantasies. I know you guys have probably seen them or heard of them before. They've been all over the internet, and for good reason. I mean, like, they're just so delightfully warming and cozy, and they don't ask anything of you, and they slowly meander you along. And I loved being present for both of these stories. In Legends and Lattes, which this, by the way, is the prequel to this, but this came out first, we follow Viv, who is an orc who's done fighting battles and being a mercenary, and she wants to settle down and open up a coffee shop in a town that doesn't know what coffee is, so she's trying to bring coffee to this town. You see as she's buying the building that it's going to be in, creating friendships, hiring people, them learning how to run this business, and the bonds that she makes. Again, a couple little problems happen in there, but nothing too serious, and it just was so warming and delightful, and I loved it. And same with Bookshops and Bone Dust, but in this one, Viv is much younger. It's when she's just starting out being a mercenary. She's really excited about fighting, and she gets injured, and she has to rest for a while in a cute, cozy, small seaside town. And you see her kind of dating a little bit. She's also dating in this someone else, spoiler alert, but she's meeting friends. She helps a small bookshop owner refurbish their bookshop, and it's all about living in a bookshop and working in a bookshop in a small seaside town, and there's a little bit of a mystery, cute little skeleton mystery going on, and love these. If you haven't read them yet and they interest you, I think they're great. Next we have Big Swiss by Jen Began, and I loved this when I read it. I read it around May. I remember I was reading it on the plane when my brother graduated from college. It's about this woman who works for a sex therapist as his transcriber, and she becomes obsessed with one of his patients through transcribing her sessions, and then she meets this woman in real life, and she forms this like friendship with her based on lies. It becomes kind of more than a friendship. It's about trauma. This is a book about trauma and how people deal with it, and it had some of the most powerful messages about that in this book. So we see the woman that our main character becomes obsessed with. The way she deals with trauma is like, or her discussions talking about it, like she really has been through some traumatic stuff. And I really don't, like, she chooses not, like, it just doesn't affect her life. And I love the way that she talked about not letting things control you. But it's also, of course, much more complicated and nuanced than that, absolutely. And then our main character, we really see her kind of sinking into her own grime and sadness, and you can see that all around her in the house that she's living in. So you get these two extremes, and it's such a cool look, again, at how trauma affects you in your life and how you interact with it. And our relationships with our own trauma. And I really loved Big Swiss. Really loved it. Totally. I really want to reread this, actually. Now that I'm talking about it, this is the one that I'm like, whoa, I really want to reread it. So that is Big Swiss. Another one of my top favorite reads of the year was Soldier Sailor by Claire Kilroy. Now, this is a book that wins for making me cry the absolute most of any book. Oh, God, one of any books literally ever, but definitely this year, at least, absolutely. And this book was on the Women's Prize long list, which is exciting. Was it on the short list? I think it was. I don't remember. It's the one that I wanted to win. So yeah, I think it was on the short list. I digress. But this is about a very stream of consciousness. We're in the head of this young new mother who has her first baby child, and she's married to a man, and it is about her dealing with postpartum depression, her new life. It's all of her like spiraling thoughts. She meets this person who becomes a friend. That's not really what it's about though. It's just about like her spiraling thoughts and what it means to be a mother and like the power of it, and how she like both hates and loves this like change happening in her life. Oh my God, it was like insanely powerful. And I think it really, really hit me at the end, and I don't want to cry right now thinking about it, but it really hit me at the end because it really made me feel so grateful for my mother and the concept of like good mothers, because I know everybody has a mother, and it's unfortunate that not all mothers are going to be good mothers, just as it's unfortunate not all fathers are going to be good fathers. But we're talking about mothers here. And what was I saying? But yeah, it just made me so grateful for my mom. I can't even. And that made me sob. And it just really, more so than anything, really captured that feeling of like, your parents are real people that like don't know what they're doing at all. And I know that now, obviously, as an adult. I've had many moments where I'm like, yeah, for sure. But as a kid, like, it really as a kid, you just don't think that, you know? And I just thought this book captured that so well. And it, as a female who hopes to one day be a mother, who like carries their own child and like has a child, hopefully, you never know. But as someone who wants to be a mother one day, it was really powerful, and it just made me so emotional. And I think it's really necessary, like, to think about all of these things and to hear all these different women's like really deep, honest, raw, nuanced perspectives of what that transformation is like and how insane of a transformation it is. Wow. So Soldier Sailor, loved that, like, wow. And then I also listened to, on audiobook, like most of Abby Jimenez's books this year, and 2 of them have made it on my top favorite books of the year list, and that is Yours Truly and Just for the Summer, again, both by Abby Jimenez. I love Abby Jimenez. So Emily Henry and Abby Jimenez, favorite modern contemporary romance authors. For me, I really think they're like head and shoulders above at least whoever I've read. I haven't read everybody, so who knows. I just think they're really doing something. You know, they're really doing something. I think Abby Jimenez is particularly amazing at writing male love interests, but that's besides the point. I think she really captures like mental health issues, specifically in Yours Truly. Our main male protagonist really has severe like social anxiety, and boy, was that relatable. And so happy I read that. And it was just such a beautiful book. She just writes such beautiful romances and beautiful men that I'm like, wow, only a woman could write that. And Just for the Summer was really, really powerful for me specifically because it is a lot about our 2 main characters' relationships with their parents, or specifically their moms, and how they kind of each have very different but very like contentious relationships with their moms. Our male character's mom is going to prison, and so he has to like care for his younger siblings, and he becomes their older brother, but kind of like their dad, their guardian. And our main female character just has like a really not present, very unwell, like mentally unwell, very selfish mother. And it was really hard for me to listen to that for most of the book. And topics like that are really difficult and really personal for me. So it could have gone either way. Like, this could have been a 1-star book, or it could have been a 5-star book, and it was a 5-star book. Like, the way that our female character was like grappling with that, oh man, it could have gone either way. It really could have gone either way. But I loved how it didn't turn into a message of like, you must forgive everyone and blah, blah, blah. Like, because I just hate that, like, on such a deep level. It's ridiculous. Forgiveness looks different, you know what I mean, in different ways. And I think it's like coming to terms with things and having boundaries is what our character had to learn. And I'm glad that that's what she learned, you know? Like, I really liked this book. And it was so funny. There were moments in this book that were hysterical. Same with Yours Truly, but man, I laughed so hard. There's like a scene where I think his name is Justin, is like picking up his mom and her friend from like a night out, and they're like in the car and they have all these raccoons. My God, it was so funny. I was laughing out loud. Absolutely. Last but not least, and my camera's about to die, we have Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. And this was one that after thinking about it for a long time, I changed my rating from a 4-star to a 5-star. And this is such a powerful portrayal of this young woman. It's like, this is a tragic French classic, right? About this woman who has all these lofty dreams and she's very passionate and whatever, and she's very selfish too, by the way. And how she feels like people just don't understand her husband just doesn't understand her, and she makes all these terrible decisions and the tragedy that kind of comes of that. This is such like a perfectly well-crafted, to me, it feels like a cautionary tale. Yeah, Emma Bovary was just such an interesting character. Thank you so much for watching. What were your favorite books of the year? I hope you guys had a great reading year. Can't wait for next year. I guess all the beautiful books that we will read and experience. And again, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.